Imagine helping a neighbor move furniture, a normal favor, the kind of thing people do without even thinking twice. But for Herr, that favor became the trap. He was murdered, his phone was used to lure another victim, and then his family has to face the possibility that people might believe he was the murderer. This is the case of Daniel Wozniak, Herr, and Julie Kibuishi on Tell Me the Crime. Welcome back to Tell Me the Crime. We just did like a nasty little face at each other right before this, so of course.
I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I did. Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, welcome back to Tell Me the Crime. We have a really crazy one today. Yeah.
What episode are we now at?
So today's episode is episode 12, which is getting up there, isn't it? I mean,
wow.
It's pretty crazy that we're already at 12.
Yeah. So
we always make a comment like that at the beginning. Yeah. But okay, let's jump right into it because this is a long one, but there's a lot of details and it's really
I'm excited about it.
I think you will be. I think you will be excited. So, okay. So the title of the episode is "The Actor, the Veteran, and the Murder Scene He Tried to Write." Mm-hmm.
The actor, the murderer,
and the
veteran.
The young man's name is Daniel Wozniak. Okay, so he's the perp in this episode. Okay, so let's get into it. So the time is May of 2010 in Costa Mesa, California. There was a young man named Daniel Wozniak. Now, he was only 26 years old, so he's young. He's, got his whole life ahead of him. He was involved in the community. He did theater. He was engaged. His wedding day was only a few days away. Okay, so from the outside, his life had the outline of something pretty ordinary. A fiance, an apartment, friends, a wedding date, and a role in a musical. So the kind of life where people are asking about the ceremony, the honeymoon, the next performance, the next rehearsal, right? So he has a pretty decent life, actually. I would say it's more than just normal. It's probably a decent, sounds like a pretty good life, right? But under the surface, things weren't exactly that way for him, right? They weren't as stable. So Wozniak was actually pretty broke. And he was left behind financially, right? So he was facing eviction even in his building. He did not have money to support the life that he was still pretending to everyone that he had, right? And this is sort of where, where the case begins psychologically, because there's this divide, right, between what's real, and what people see. And what people see, exactly.
Or what he decided to show.
Exactly. So what he's willing to show, on the outside to his viewers or whoever you want to call them, right? So that kind of pressure, could lead to embarrassment, right? Having that pressure to sort of live that outside perspective, right? So if someone is presenting themselves as successful, then you got a lot of pressure to sort of make sure that you're there. So that leads to avoidance, lying, borrowing money, right? Because he was broke. Go ahead.
Yeah, why did he do that in the first place?
Why did he do, why did he lie? Why did he...
Why did he, try to show people the situation that he was not really living in? I mean,
that's a pretty common thing. I mean, think about how many Instagram posts are out there where people talk about how, they post everything online.
People tend to show something that's good.
People try to express the best versions of themselves on socials, right? And a lot of this happens in real life too. You try to present the best version of yourself, and a lot of that is built from insecurity. Right. So if you're not particularly high in self-esteem. That tends to be the case. Maybe we don't know, right? I'm not going to say I know anything about this person's personality or, their psychology, but often it is about the need to rise your self-esteem through these methods, right? So, so for Daniel Wozniak, right, the prosecutors at least say that this pressure that he had on himself was what turned into something much colder, right? So he began looking for another person's life as a way out of his own. And that person was his neighbor, Samuel Herr, okay, Herr. And most people just call him Sam, right? So Sam was also 26 years old. He lived in the same apartment complex as Wozniak, and he was an army vet who had served in Afghanistan. So he was back home in California, taking classes at Orange County College, trying to build the next part of his life. Now, physically, Sam looked like someone who had been in the military, right? So he was young, he was fit, he was disciplined. He's not exactly someone you would imagine as immediately vulnerable, right? So he was the kind of person who had already been through real danger and actually come home from it, right? So he was in war, right? So, and he was close to his parents, Steve and Rachel Herr, right? So he sounds like he has his life together, right? So Sam was their only child. And that matters because when we talk about a murder victim, it's easy for the person to become a role in that case. The veteran, the neighbor, the man with the money, right? But Sam was not just the person Wozniak targeted. He was someone's son. He was someone's friend. He was someone who had survived war and was now living in an apartment complex in Costa Mesa where the danger obviously was no longer from a battlefield, but it was from someone nearby, someone familiar. And that person was, of course, Daniel, right?
Wait, so the motive here is something about money?
The motive here, from what we understand and from what the prosecutors, understand, is that it was about money and being able to maintain this appearance, right, of having your life together and, having money in order to pay for the wedding and, because he had a wedding coming up in days. So Sam had money saved, right? Public reporting describes it as about maybe $62,000 connected to his military service. So that's a lot of money for someone, especially to see when he himself is very broke, right? So he saw that as security for him, right? If he could get his hands on it somehow, a future or something he had, had the ability to earn for himself, right? If he could get it away. Sorry, for Wozniak, I should say. So for the purposes of motive here, right? There's a strong motive for Wozniak or for him to go after Sam for the money if he could find it.
How did he know? How did he know that Sam?
Well, they were friends and they were neighbors, right? So, yeah.
I mean,
so he was living in the
do people actually share? Like, hey, how much money you have?
That's probably something to our listeners out there. You probably shouldn't share if you do have a little savings. I don't know how he knew about it. But I mean, you can imagine, who knows, maybe they're getting drunk or something, wasted.
Yeah,
and
maybe they're so close. And
yeah, exactly. Because it's something that some people do share with each other. Or maybe he stalked them and found out. Who knows? Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so by May 21st of 2010, right, Daniel Wozniak had a plan. He needed to get Sam somewhere private, somewhere he knew, somewhere he could control. And according to prosecutors, he convinced Sam to go with him to a theater facility at the Los Alamedo's joined forces training base by asking Sam to help him move furniture. Okay. So that detail is important because it sounds just so ordinary.
Yeah,
help me move
I would not
right?
say that it's suspicious.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I would say, this is, of course, like what are friends for, right? I mean, even just what are neighbors for, it's, I would probably go along with it as well. And so that's the crazy thing, right? Is that a lot of these stories start out with the victim being, absolutely unaware of anything about to happen. And to him, he's done nothing wrong, right? So Sam hasn't done anything wrong to Daniel. And so why would he ever suspect that he would kill him?
I would not either.
Right? So I wouldn't either. I would just hope, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go help out a friend. Why would they do anything bad to me? Okay. So Sam went along. The location was a theater. It wasn't a glamorous theater. And it wasn't a famous stage. It was a local performance space on a military base. But for Wozniak, it was familiar territory, right? He had performed there already. He knew the environment. He knew how to move inside that world. So that's pretty important, right? To be familiar with the space where everything is about to happen, because he can maintain that control. Right, much like he's trying to maintain the control and the perception of his outside appearance to the world. So, theater is this kind of a symbolic space for this to happen, right? Because it's where people rehearse reality, right? You pretend and you stand where you're told to stand. You say the line. You create a world that's not real.
It's pretty much
audience,
like an act.
Yeah, exactly.
On the stage.
And the audience agrees to believe it for a while, but on this day, obviously on May 21st, there was no audience, right? There was Sam, there was Wozniak, and then there was the plan. And inside that theater facility, Daniel Wozniak ended up shooting Sam Herr twice. So Sam, who had served in Afghanistan, was killed after being lured by a neighbor under the pretense of helping him move furniture. That is the first murder.
What? The first?
Yeah.
That's only Sam.
I know. We didn't realize that this was a multi-part murder. Yeah. So
and
that's the first person
how did he get the money?
Killed. We'll get to that. So after Sam was dead, Wozniak took his wallet, right? He took his ATM card and he took his phone. Okay, so that's how he got the money, right? So he took all of that stuff. And the phone was one of the most important pieces now for this entire case. Okay, so we'll come back to that because once Wozniak had Sam's phone, he did not just have an object. He had his identity. He had access to Sam's relationships, right? He could text everyone. He could do whatever he wanted with that phone. You now have access, save passwords, things like that, right? He had the ability to make other people think Sam was still alive. And that's what a lot of these, murderers end up doing, right? Is trying to pretend the person is still responsive for a while so that no one is suspicious. Okay. So the second victim was Juri Kibuishi, known as Julie. Okay, so Julie was 23 years old, and she was a college student and a dancer. She was young, she was creative, and by all public descriptions, someone people loved to be around. Right? She was a light in everyone's view. She knew that she knew Sam through Orange Coast College, and she had helped tutor him. She was connected to him through school and through friendship. So Julie was not just a random person walking past the wrong apartment, right? And, happen to overhear something. She was connected. She was someone that Sam actually knew. So someone who cared enough to respond when she thought he needed her. But that is what Wozniak used. right? So he used, and in both of these cases, you know, the thing that he's doing is he's using the kindness of other people against them, which is really twisted, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, how do you sleep at night, like doing that? I don't know. It's crazy. Sorry, taking a giant sip of my coffee, and I just told you got to watch it when we're sipping our coffee because it comes through the mic really clearly. Okay, so imagine this from Julie's side, right? You get a message from someone you know, someone you trust, someone who seems to need you. And really, there's no reason to think that the person sending the message is already dead. There's no reason to think that someone else is holding the phone, right? Because why would you? And especially if you're smart about it and you look at how they text, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that you'd probably do. So to Julie, the message came from Sam, and because of that, she went to his apartment. And that's where this second layer of manipulation comes in. Wozniak did not only use his own relationship with Sam, he used Sam's relationship with Julie. So he took trust that already existed between two people and he just turned it into a trap. So Julie wasn't tricked because she was careless. She was tricked because the person, because she trusted the person she thought was texting her. Do you think that changes how we should think about vulnerability in cases like this?
I don't think so.
Right? Like,
it's really
tough.
hard. Like, you will not suspect anything of, if you know that, oh, it's my friend, like Julie got a call or got a text from Sam, let's say, right?
Exactly.
That's something normal.
Yeah.
I would not think that there will be a third person who's using this guy's phone.
Right.
Unless I know that the language is a little bit off, you know, because sometimes you can get a sense, it's not you.
Exactly. So that's what I mean by like a sense of, you know, should we be more, I guess, closed off or aware of like that vulnerable side of ourselves? Like, should we trust everything that these things are, if it comes through as odd, is it someone acting weird because, you know, they just got some bad news, or is it potentially something a lot darker, right? But anyway, no, I'm on the same side as you though. On this one.
I know. But I think through some interactions, like if we send a text, back and forth, then you probably can get a sense that, oh, this is not really him. What's going on? And you might ask, right?
Yeah.
I probably would ask that if I got some weird text, which I know that my friend is not using that style. So I will ask, are you okay? You know, at least, can get a sense of that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So we'll come back to the text. So Daniel texts her impersonating Sam, and he ends up having her come over after midnight on May 22nd. Okay, so Julie arrived at Sam's apartment shortly after midnight on the 22nd of May.
Ooh.
Now, Daniel, of course, met her there. And he ended up bringing her inside. And I'm sure that he told her something like, oh, yeah,
he's inside.
He's
Just come
inside
in.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what he did. And then he ended up shooting her, too.
Oh, wow.
So Julie was killed in Sam's apartment.
What did he take from her?
What did he take from her? We'll get to that as well. So, because even then, right, he wasn't really finished with this plan, right?
Oh.
So because Julie's death had a function in this story, in his mind, right? So he was trying to use her in a way, right? He staged the scene in this case, right? And this is really twisted. He staged the scene to make it look like Sam had sexually assaulted and murdered her.
Huh.
So he partially removed her clothing. The scene was arranged to point suspicion towards Sam. And remember, too, Sam is already dead, right? He can't defend himself now. He can't explain. He can't say, this wasn't me, right? All we know is that they were texting earlier that day. She came over late at night. and they're both found dead in his apartment, right? So Wozniak's plan here was not to steal her money.
Right.
It was not only to kill... it was kill Sam and his
like
identity,
build the narrative,
and then make Sam the villain, right? Which is really dark.
But how many days, though, after Sam was murdered by him?
Right. So this is I think only a couple of weeks. No, actually, it was less than that. It was the next day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was the next day. So this is very
That's
soon,
really fast.
Very fast, and having doing that too. Obviously, this is premeditated. If he's thinking of all of these things ahead of time. Okay, so he set up Sam, unfortunately, and he couldn't defend himself, and tried to make police, Sam's family, Julie's family, and the public believe that Herr had murdered Julie and just run away. So to me, it feels like a second victimization of Sam. He's murdered. Yeah. And then his identity is used as a disguise. I mean, do you think that's kind of like psychological violence against the family as well? Because that's really twisted. And imagine being the family in that case.
I think so. I mean, that's also a way of building kind of a story about Sam, right? Yeah. I mean, you can imagine if their parents, Sam was the only child in the family, and then there was no problem at all about him. So everyone loved him probably, right? But then with that story, then people would start thinking,
change their perception of him.
He's not as good as I thought, and that's kind of.
I always wonder about those cases too, like what once something like that happens, and once they are accused of something, even after they're exonerated and people find out that they had nothing to do with it, they were totally innocent and they were just completely set up, I feel like there's still an amount of like stigma attached to that person forever, which is really shitty, because it's
that's
like
not great.
It's like if someone was accused of being like a child molester or something, right? Like a child predator, right? And they're accused of it, but later they're exonerated, and prior to that they were a babysitter, right? Would you, even after they're exonerated, like, would you be comfortable letting that person take care of your kids after?
No.
Probably not, right? Like, even though they didn't do anything wrong, it totally leaves a trail of like darkness with that person, which is really shitty, because it's really bad. It's horrible, because the person that got accused is totally screwed. Anyway, the next part of the story is unfortunately one of the most painful parts, right? So Sam's parents became worried that they could not reach him. So his father, Steve Herr, called Sam's phone again and again. Now, Sam was supposed to come over that weekend, but the phone was off. And according to the father, Sam had just Sam does not just turn his phone off like that. It was very odd for him to do. And like you said before, right? Like with text messages, sometimes you can just tell there's certain types of texts or certain types of behaviors related to your phone that just doesn't make sense, right? Like, some people are super hyper aware of like how much their battery has run down, and they'll make sure that they have a charger on at all times, shit like that. So the silence just felt wrong to the dad, right? So Steve Herr went to his son's apartment. And think about what he expected, right? Maybe Sam was sleeping. Maybe he'd had a party. He was, hungover or something like that. Maybe lost his phone. Maybe something was wrong. But what Steve Herr found was not Sam. He found Julie. And he found Julie was dead in Sam's apartment, and Sam was missing.
Oh, interesting. I thought
Sam wasn't in the apartment. No, he wasn't found there. So he was led to... So that was that was Daniel's plan, right? Is to make it look like he killed Julie after essaying her, right? Sexually assaulting her, and then ran away, right? So that's exactly the image that Wozniak wanted the world to see.
Oh, interesting.
And, these themes of like theater keep coming back. With him.
Yeah. I thought that Wozniak intended to do that and left Sam there. So when the police found the bodies, is 2 people dead in the apartment. So I didn't think that he would just leave Julie in the apartment, but not Sam.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I was a little bit surprised by that because I thought like if he had planned this whole thing out and he was going to shoot one person, why didn't he just have them both shoot each other in the end and stage it like that? I don't know. But I was thinking the same thing as you. Okay, so the first story was already sitting there, right? Waiting for police. And for a while it worked, right? Police initially had reason to look for Sam because from the outside, the scene pointed towards him, right? Julie was in his apartment. He was gone. His phone was being used. His body had not been found. So, that's, of course, what staging does. And Daniel was very good at that. So it gives people a first impression. And first impressions here matter. And the human brain doesn't like uncertainty, right? It starts building a story very quickly. It fills in the pieces very quickly. A body in an apartment, a tenant missing, a sexualized scene, a relationship between the victim and the missing man. The brain makes those connections pretty quickly, right?
Wait, what did the Sam's dad do when he found Julie's body?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what he did when he found the body, but I would imagine that
he would report to the police right away.
Yeah, I would assume so, right? I mean, he didn't. Any normal, person would probably do that, I think, right? Because he's like shocked and he wouldn't believe if he knows his son as well as, I believe he probably did. He wouldn't have believed that Sam did it anyway, right? So, you just say, well, okay, well, the truth will come out. Okay. So, while all of this was unfolding, Daniel Wozniak was still moving through ordinary life, right? And not just moving through life, he was like skating through it as if nothing was happening, right? That's one of the most disturbing things about this case is he didn't disappear. He didn't run away. He didn't immediately fall apart like some people do if they feel guilty about certain things, right? He just went back into the world where people knew him as an actor, a fiance, and a person about to get married. And public reporting describes him as performing in the community theater musical 9. The theater musical was called 9, around the time of the murders. So nothing changed in his life. Like, he was able to maintain a completely straight face and completely just like pull the cloth over everyone's eyes. So the fact that he was an actor, is something we have to be a little bit careful about because it doesn't explain the murders, right? Just because he was able to cover those things up, right? Theater doesn't cause that. Acting doesn't cause that, obviously. So how does someone become like that? But the performance element is psychologically important because the entire crime depended on this role-playing ability, right? So he played the neighbor asking for help, which was obviously a lie. He then played Sam through Sam's phone. He then staged Sam as the killer.
So
right?
Yeah.
So he's doing all of these, these stagings in this entire story, which is very, very dark. Yeah.
Did the police find Sam's body?
We'll get to that. We'll get to all of it. Yeah, I know it's a deep one. This is a whole, mess, right? Then, he returned to his own role as Daniel Wozniak, which is also just a perception that he made up to people, right? The actor and the groom-to-be. So it's not, it's not just lying. It's really like the ability to compartmentalize into these different roles really, really readily. So, do you think that with normal people, guilt usually shows?
Of course.
Exactly. Right. So do you think like even when people try not to and they're trying to hide it, like, can't you always tell? Like, couldn't you tell if I was like trying to hide something from you, you'd be like, what's wrong with you? Like some days you're just like, there's something off.
That. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just, it's odd that no one was picking up on any cues with him. Right. It just makes you think what kind of person has that ability?
I don't know. It's really strange to me, though. I think one of the human traits is the empathy, and I don't know how you can cover. I cannot even hide the when you feel sad, for example, or when you feel certain things that you don't want other people to pick anything from your expressions or how you behave. But I think some people will definitely catch.
They'll usually you can see something change in them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe their face, just a micro expression, or like their voice or their behavior in some capacity just changes. Yeah. Maybe they're nervous or they're agitated or strange, but this one kind of, it doesn't happen for him, right? So how do you act so normal? And we've talked about that before, where a lot of times, and here's the thing too, is that we talk about psychopaths, right, as lacking empathy, right? And that could be the case here, right? I don't know. I didn't actually see any evidence that was the case, but he does certainly sound like, what psychopaths are able to do is just move along and sort of act the exact same way they've always been acting, right? Because it doesn't really affect them. So, not to say all psychopaths are bad, because they're not, right? Like, there's a lot more psychopaths in the world than people realize, and we've talked about this before, but there's a ton of them, a lot in business too. So,
oh no.
Let's come back to, the plan, right? What was the whole plan? And it seems to be going pretty well for him, right? But there was obviously a weakness, and there was the money, right? And money was the motive here. And because of that, it created a trail, right? Because Wozniak, if you recall, he was using Sam's bank card. And Wozniak, he was broke, right? So that does create a motive, and it does create a potential digital or paper trail for people to follow. Yeah. So Wozniak involved a 17-year-old girl named Wesley Freilich, asking him to withdraw money using Sam's ATM card. Okay, now that was a big mistake.
Who is this guy?
That is a good question. I have no idea who that is, but I don't know if it was a friend or if it was just some random kid he saw on the street. But this person was asked by Daniel to withdraw that money, right? And that was definitely a mistake, because once police traced the ATM activity and it got back to Wesley, the story began to crack, right? Wesley told authorities that Wozniak had given him the card. So now that looks pretty damn bad for Wesley, right? Now the stage version of the story had a problem, right? If Sam had killed Julie and run away, why was Daniel connected to Sam's bank account? And why was there a teenager withdrawing money from Sam's account, right? That looks pretty damn suspicious. So it kind of points back to Wozniak. And this is the thing about stage crimes, right? They can look convincing from one angle. They can but they really have to survive every single angle. The phone records, the bank records, the timeline, the people involved, the physical evidence, etc. Right? But at the end of the day, investigators get to test, whether the story that people are trying to portray actually holds up. And that's where his kind of fell apart, right? So when the police questioned him, at first he lied. But eventually, after unraveling, like a lot of these cases, they got him to confess. Okay, so according to reporting from the released grand jury testimony, Detective Mike Delgadillo testified that Daniel said he killed Sam first and then Julie, and that it was all about the money, right? And that line matters because it cuts through every possible sort of dramatic interpretation, right? It was not passion, it wasn't panic, it wasn't a fight, it wasn't self-defense, it was just money. And if you remember, like, how much money that is, too, sure, it's, it's a lot of money for you and I, right? I think it was around 60 grand.
Something?
Yeah, 60-something grand. Which can be life-changing for people who are struggling, absolutely. But, man, for a human life?
No.
That is insane. There's no amount that can justify it. But 60 grand is just so low. It's so insulting to. And
you have to, one day you will be responsible for what you've done.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is no freedom in your life anymore, although you have that money.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But no one that does this stuff ever expects they're going to get caught, though, right?
Well, I don't know. Humans, don't you feel the guilt?
Yeah.
How would you use that? How would you not, think about, I don't know if I will still be here tomorrow, or I will still have my freedom to live. I think there should be some kind of thought like that.
You'd think, but not everyone is as smart as you. So, yeah. Or as smart as a lot of rational people. There's obviously something wrong with a lot of these people that do these things, right? Because it doesn't. I don't know. Sure, he was going to get evicted and all those things, and that sucks. And everyone's been through hard times, and I shouldn't be, not sensitive to them, the people that are really struggling, of course, but. At the same time, there's nothing that justifies murdering someone for money, right? It's just crazy that money became such a motive for that sort of thing.
But
it's all a made-up human construct.
When did the police actually start catching the case about Sam? Because
that's a very good question. I think. They started to. When his dad just wasn't getting a response, right? So he went to Sam's apartment, right? And then that's where he found the body. So that's when everyone was like, okay, let's go look for Sam. So that was
pretty fast act, though. Because after the murder, then the dad was trying to look for where his son was, and...
the police started looking for Sam immediately after the body was found of Julie, right? Because because we don't know what happened to her until Sam's found, and they were going under the assumption that he was still alive, but that's obviously not the case.
Did he have the wedding?
Did Daniel have the wedding?
Yeah.
That is a good question. No. I do not believe that he did, because he was kind of reckless with everything, right? So he started using his card and all of that. So we'll get to that in a sec as well. So the police eventually did find Sam's body, but they didn't find all of him, right? They found only dismantled parts of Sam's body.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so part of Sam's remains were found at the theater facility.
Oh, wow. still there.
Yeah, and other remains were recovered in the El Dorado Nature Center area in Long Beach. So reports described the recovery as taking place over multiple searches. Now, this part is pretty horrific, but the reason it matters is not in shock value. It matters because of what it really shows about his behavior. After killing Sam, right, Wozniak treated his body as a logistical problem, right? He wasn't just like, oh, let's, panic and dump this somewhere or like get rid of it because it's disgusting. Like, no, it was more like, okay, let's strategically think. It's something to move or hide or separate, manage. He treated it like it was just another object, right? It's really dehumanizing, right? To do something like that.
Yeah, if he was trying to hide, and even he was building the story that Sam, there was a story between Sam and Julie, okay? Why did he even do that? Like, place the remains in several places, especially in the theater, because the police would get that pretty easily.
Yeah, because that does look like someone trying to hide a body, especially, right? But he was shot, so... But you're right. There could have been like multiple reasons why someone...
Sorry.
That's all right. There's multiple reasons why he could have been shot, right? He could have like placed it so it looked like a robbery gone wrong or something.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I mean, if you think about it, because he was trying to make a narrative that Sam killed Julie. Okay. And then the body, Sam's remains were found in several places. If Sam was the one who killed Julie, then his body should be, like even if someone did suicide.
Right, yeah.
He would still have like the full body, not remains everywhere.
I know, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, of course. So he basically destroyed his own narrative with doing it that way. But I don't think he expected anyone to find the body, though.
Yeah, right? That's probably his
He was probably
his
thinking
goal.
that if he disposes of it properly, they'll all just assume that he disappeared, that he ran away, rather than, got killed or committed suicide or whatever, right? Okay, so Rachel Buffet was Daniel Wozniak's fiance. She wasn't convicted of murder. She was not involved in any way in pulling the trigger or helping plan the killings, or knew in advance, allegedly, that Daniel was going to kill Sam, Herr, and Julie Kibuishi. So her conviction, though, did end up happening for what happened after the murders. So
what happened?
So in 2018, Rachel Buffet was convicted of being an accessory after the fact. So prosecutors argued that she lied to detectives during the investigation and that her lies helped protect Daniel after the murders. So the central question is how much she knew, right? Because we don't, that's kind of like the most important thing to to know.
What did she lie about?
So she lied about seeing someone on the day, on one of the days that is very important. So her defense said that she did not know Daniel had killed anyone. They argued that Daniel had lied to her too. So the defense tried to say that she was basically manipulated just like everyone else. But that's not what the prosecution saw. So what they saw was, and they argued that Rachel knew enough to understand that her statements mattered and that she gave police false information anyway. So one important part involved a man named Chris Williams. Now, Chris Williams had loaned money to Daniel and Rachel, because remember, they were struggling financially, right? So he came to their apartment on the same day that Sam disappeared. And he said he saw Daniel, Rachel, and Sam there together. Then Daniel and Sam left. Later, Daniel came back without Sam. So that's pretty big key piece of information, right? And Chris said Daniel seemed somewhat emotional or panicked and had cash with him. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily mean Daniel was falling apart in public, because remember, I said that Daniel sort of remained composed and he was able to move through his life and continue with theater production. But according to Chris Williams, in that private moment after returning without Sam, Daniel did seem somewhat emotional and panicked. So at least after the very, same day that was happening, or it could have, you never know, right? Like, who knows how much that actually was true. Okay, so prosecutors said Rachel did not tell detectives about Chris Williams being there. They also said that she repeated Daniel's story that Sam had left with an unidentified man wearing a black hat. Yeah, that mattered because it supported Daniel's false version of events. And if Sam had left with some unknown man, then Sam might still be alive, right? And if Sam might still be alive, then police might continue looking at Sam as Julie's killer. So Rachel's defense argued that she did not know the full truth, but the jury still convicted her as an accessory after the fact. So she was eventually sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in jail for that.
Wow.
That's a long time. Damn. But I mean, it is murder. It's a pretty big deal. Yeah. So she wasn't involved in the murders themselves, but she did lie to police and, hindered an investigation, right? And that's a serious offense. And I don't think people realize how big of a deal that is, right? Because that's a long time in prison. So, that brings us back to the basic facts of the case, right? Daniel Wozniak killed Sam Herr. He then used Sam's phone to lure Julie into Sam's apartment. He then killed Julie. He staged the scene so it looks like Sam had killed Julie and run away. And then he used Sam's bank card to get the money. The plan eventually failed because the evidence did not match the story, right? The ATM withdrawals pointed back toward Daniel. Witnesses placed Sam with Daniel, and Daniel eventually confessed after all of this, right? So, and like I said, police eventually found Sam's remains too, scattered everywhere. And of course, Sam's name was cleared, right? So he was obviously a major victim in all of this, along with the family and everyone else that was involved in Julie's family. And so Daniel Wozniak was eventually convicted in 2015 on 2 counts of first-degree murder. And in 2016, he was sentenced to death.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so... Well, I mean...
What's the procedure?
He sounds pretty, pretty cold and calculated, right, with all of this. So what's the procedure for what?
For the death.
Oh, death penalty. I mean, I didn't look this up yet, but I assume he's still on death row, because that usually takes forever to go through the legal process. Like, people, sometimes assume that it happens pretty quickly. Yeah, like you're sentenced to death, and some people have been on death row for 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So I would actually be surprised if it's already happened. He's probably still alive, but I don't know. I would have to double check that. We can update the listeners next week. But that is the story for today.
Wow.
The story of someone who was willing to go all the way, murder 2 people, and stage it all and set people up all for around $60,000.
What about the 17-year-old guy who withdrew the money?
Right. Was
there any information about him at all?
No, I don't know about him. Like I said, I don't know if he was like a friend or if he was just someone that he had found on the street. I mean, if he was...
But the police certainly interviewed him, right?
Yeah, the police interviewed the kid, and that's where they got that information from, right? That he had pulled out the money for Daniel, which was another piece in the cap for their story, right? For the prosecution. So, yeah, that's the disturbing story for today. Us. No problem. So thank you, everyone, for telling me the crime. This one's a bit long today. Sorry about that, but hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll be back next week on Tell Me the Crime.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.